Since the 2025 federal election, we have seen the coalition really struggle to come to terms with what it actually wants to be going ahead in Australian politics. And it's really coming to a head this weekend, as it has seemingly every other week since the election, as the chaos has continued to spiral for the right side of Australian politics. But what's happening this weekend is that we have reporting from within the National Party that they are officially going to ditch net zero as a commitment going ahead and force the Liberals' hand to address this issue in a way that won't tear the coalition apart. So first things first, things might be a little bit more high def than before. I've bought a new phone for the first time in a little over 3 years now, going on 4. And Apple doesn't actually make the connection for the headphones that I have anymore. It's all USB-C, so I dug this out. Hopefully, this might actually make the audio levels better than what they've been. But anyway, hence the new testing of this setup. So anyway, back to the actual story at hand. So what has happened over this last week is that the Nationals Federal Council, basically their executive body, has come together and has voted to ditch net zero in line with what all the state-level branches of the National Party have already done. And that is not a binding commitment to Nationals MPs. There's a difference between the Federal Council and the actual party room. They don't have to take that on board, but it's a pretty clear sign that the Nationals membership broadly has given up completely on the idea of a commitment to net zero by 2050. Another reason that this is coming to a head now is that in the aftermath of the 2025 election defeat, the National Party put together a policy review team to specifically look at net zero and how the Nationals should approach it going ahead. And to everyone's concern, I would imagine outside of the National Party, one of the key leaders of that review was Matt Canavan, a man tasked with looking at what are the economics, what are the practical implications of approaching net zero, how will it affect regional areas, and it's pretty agreed upon, particularly looking at sources within the National Party that the Australian has looked at in their reporting, that this review is going to be incredibly critical of the party supporting net zero going ahead and will recommend that the policy is dropped entirely by the Nationals. So with this review coming out imminently, David Littleproud has scheduled a party room meeting for tomorrow for the National Party to officially decide whether or not it is going to support net zero as policy going ahead. And it's looking very unlikely. So as we understand it, the report itself, co-authored by Canavan, will recommend a different form of energy mix, lifting the moratorium on nuclear energy, and just finding a way to reduce emissions, but not with like a specific net zero goal in mind, or at least not 2050. That's all according to reporting from the Australian, talking to senior Nationals MPs and sources. But if that happens, it's going to do some unbelievable damage to the coalition, specifically the Liberal Party, in its attempts to win back its traditional base. The conundrum here for the Liberals is that the Nationals and Liberals are tied at the hip. They are a coalition, good or bad. I mean, sometimes they take a break for 3 months, but then inevitably they do get back together. And if the Liberal Party wants any chance of ever forming majority government again, well, it needs to do so as a coalition with the Nationals. And the Nationals adopting this is essentially a nightmare scenario for Susan Ley and her very weak and unsuccessful attempt so far to rehabilitate the image of the Liberal Party. Look, imagine this situation. 2028 rolls around, it's election time. The Liberals have, by some miracle, managed to adopt net zero as their official policy platform, net zero by 2050 specifically, but the Nationals are utterly opposed to that. That is a very hard pitch to sell to the Australian people. Make us the government, the coalition that is, even though internally we are completely divided on this one policy platform. If you have a concern about the environment and emissions and just like the catastrophe that is climate change, you're probably not going to vote for the Liberals with the understanding that they can only really form government by making concessions to a group that is outright rejecting the notion of achieving net zero in a reasonable time frame. Look, the Liberal Party is facing a number of dilemmas and issues that are preventing them from getting back into majority government position. But I would say the biggest one, the one that is kind of like an existential threat to them and is not going to go away easy is the existence of teal independence. And let's be honest, if they have to find some compromise position on climate like this, you are essentially ensuring that the teal independents are solidified in their power base, in their block within Parliament, on Sydney's North Shore, in the richer suburbs of Melbourne, all throughout the country, that they are going to keep winning. Because these people won basically on the promise of, we are liberals, but we actually have conscience when it comes to issues of climate change, and we won't be radicals on that issue. They're not going anywhere if the National Party manages to force the Liberals' hand to take some sort of weird, weak middle ground position on net zero. So that's the chaotic hellscape side of it for whatever moderate Liberals are left. But I've also seen some reporting by The Australian as well, in that same story, that there are some rumours going around that this net zero position that the Nationals are very likely to adopt tomorrow, that being rejecting the idea of it entirely, will be used as basically a bargaining chip by the Nationals to try and extort more pro-regional policies out of the Liberal Party. So the proposal going around, like this little whisper going around the coalition MPs behind closed doors, is that the Nationals will come out with this proposal of abandon net zero by 2050 entirely. We're not supporting that, but we could be moved a little bit if there was an extra couple $2 billion for regional funding, which is, I guess, what you would expect the Nationals to do. And you honestly can't blame them, because the issue of net zero is such a third rail in the Liberal Party at the moment, not just the broader coalition, but the Liberal Party, that this is probably the best way for the Nationals to extract concessions out of the Liberals. Because the National Party, just like everyone else in Australia, is acutely aware of how unstable the leadership is right now within the Liberal Party, and how much net zero is like a fracture point for all the issues currently inside the Liberal Party. So by bringing it to the surface like this, the National Party has a very strong position to gamble from and see what they can get out of the Liberals in terms of future policy concessions. Which, yes, potentially smart politics from the Nats, but I don't think they realise that this, approach to politics to try and, extort your coalition partner for better regional policies is only going to further ensure that you don't get into government for the next decade and a half. Two of the biggest issues facing the Liberal Party is that they have a perceived climate problem and they have a cities problem. Outside of Brisbane, throughout the rest of the country, they only have 5 seats in major cities. None in Perth, none in Adelaide, not a single one in all of Tasmania. They have, I believe, 2 in Melbourne and 3 in Sydney. And the Nationals want to play a gamble where they make the coalition be perceived even more so as an anti-net zero climate skeptic party, while at the same time trying to force the Liberal Party to send more money to the regions and away from cities if it gets back into government. I don't see the long-term game here. It is astoundingly stupid what we are witnessing here. As the coalition bleeds to death, its left arm is continuing to stab itself. I would love to have a conversation about game theory with people like Matt Canavan and David Littleproud, because I wonder if they understand that the more they fight like this and drag these issues up and get concessions out of the Liberals to be a more right-wing, more regional party, that they are pushing themselves further and further and further from the levers of power and never actually getting into government. It's just funny watching a party sprint headfirst into electoral oblivion and irrelevancy, and that as we move forward on issues of climate policy, that it's not going to be the planet that will be burning. It will be what's left of the coalition burning to the ground as it continues to appeal to no one.